Thank you. So, when I was, I don't know which year Obama became president, but the image that never leaves my mind is him getting out of Air Force One and holding his BlackBerry. But they took it from him. The Secret Service said no more of this. So this attempt to come to the front with my texting going on was just some fake behavior. But yeah, like Ayoko has just said, we've been in each other's company quite a bit in the last few days, which is how I like to interact with people. I even gave some people a chance to cheat a bit by watching some of my career walk videos on YouTube, if they did. They told me they would, but I'm not looking in their direction, so I don't know if they did. But yeah, which introduces the subject of that. If you want to have more interactions of that nature, you can just Google my name on YouTube and subscribe to the channel, and you'd see a lot of that. But today, the way, as you see, I come unarmed. Neither laptop, nor tablet, nor slides, because the way I plan to go about it is to be very brief so that we can interact. And brief means that I take it from where we started on Monday, and I link it to the program you are on, the ICS. Is that how you abbreviate it? Okay. On my way here, I was actually chatting with a gentleman who has done some work for me in the past, but he was a TA in computer science. And I was asking him whether he remembered that for a long time I used to say the prof who taught me AI in 1995 was so good and he's still trending on YouTube, that I really don't think there is much more to the field and to the concepts. But in the last half year, I had a little more time, and I started to read up on all the models and all the concepts that were coming up, and the technology, the compute. And I swallowed my words. I felt that a new discipline has indeed been created, which marries a lot of concepts from what we've all done. So for myself, like I told you, my journey into technology is a very long one. When I was on the production line in Valco, I felt this is the place of my dreams. I was a chemical engineering student. I'd put a lot of things in my head that I had not seen before. And now, before my very eyes, I was working with design engineers. I was in meetings. We were using computers. And I mean, cut a long story short, one day I started going around, in American structures like Valco they had these big people they call superintendents. So I started going around the superintendents to say, look, my national service is ending, or nobody is telling me anything. I hope you guys are not planning to get rid of me, because I really like this place. And there was some hedging. When people start to say, yeah, it will be great, but let's talk. Until finally I met a superintendent called Seth J. And he was standing alone when I approached him that day. And I was like, I wish somebody would tell me something. But if nobody will, why don't you take me to your department? But he was very fatherly. So we spoke for a little longer. And then he said, there are things he cannot say immediately. But in a few hours, there will be a notice on the notice board, and I should see him after I've read it. I've never seen Seth J again, because when I read that notice, I don't think I've recovered up to now. Half of Valco was about to be shut down because of Doomso. The workforce was... Look, things were about to happen that a national service guy hoping for a job here, you better advise yourself. So literally, I forgot to go back to Seteji. And the people I was working with were laid off. Massive things happened. But that became my journey into MIS because my dad was retiring and he was really on my back to say, any job at all, you need to be off my payroll. That was his, that was his brief that, he's retiring. So he's done his share. So I found a job at the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. And it was exciting at first. We were installing a Chinese nuclear reactor, going to work and having some, engaging meetings and so on. But honestly, I was just looking beyond the reactor. What kind of future did I have as a chemical engineer in an institution that was dominated by natural scientists, like physicists, chemists, and I could feel that this is not my place. So I started the MBA, and at that time, the option I got was management science option. And I said anything, I was doing it. But a few months or maybe weeks into the management science option, we closed the class. And I just remembered my friend from the Belize Islands who I used to meet in Asylum Down, and he would say, what the hell am I doing in this country? He didn't know why he was in Ghana. And I felt the same about the management science option. Like one day we closed class and we had done so much optimization and mathematics and Go programming, and I don't know whether we were doing game theory and all that, but what we were doing, I was asking myself, am I still in engineering school or have we moved on to something else? So I went to the coordinator's office and I was like, I said I want to do this program. I am checking out. It's not a force at all. So every good counselor, he gave me a seat and we started to talk. And he's like, what don't I like? And I said, but I'm not learning anything, to be honest. As an engineer, coming to management school to come and learn optimization, I might as well have gone back to engineering school. So I'm not really learning anything. And I think next year I'll apply again. Maybe you put me in finance or something that I can. So then he told me about management information systems. And he said, it's a program that is waiting for my kind of madness. And he said, look, there's so much risk involved. The contracts have not been signed. A Belgian university has to send professors. The European Union has to sponsor. Ministry of Finance has to endorse. But when he heard me saying, I'm going home, he just decided, well, then put your name there if you are interested. Because a person like you has nothing to lose. You seem like some risk taker. And I said, yeah, it sounds like the place for me. So you put my name down. But you know how this country operates. Once I started to meet with him and we were getting ready, a few of the guys in management science also started saying, what's so bad about this place that this guy has gone to, this madness? So coordinator informed me that 3 of my classmates have come to put their names down. And eventually we were 5. Some 5th guy also came in, different story. And the madness started. Honestly, a lot of uncertainty, but that's what I loved. Because every time there was uncertainty on campus, I could work at my job a bit to ease the heart of my boss. Until finally I came clean with him. One day I went to his house and I told him that, I'm studying. And he said, what? I said, yeah, I'm studying. That's why we have been having all these battles. And he said, but it's a research institution, so we actually allow people to study. Why have you not told me? And I said, because it's an MBA, it's not a master's in engineering. And then we started fighting again. And we fought till they confirmed that, they didn't confirm, but I saw some hints that we were going to Belgium for the 2nd year. And I resigned honorably. Because, I told my big brother recently that I have fought with many employers and I have always lost. But it has never discouraged me. So I lost that one. I resigned honorably. I went to Belgium. And then I came back and the multiple thing I told you the other day started. Pricewaterhouse. We were supposed to design the Public Financial Management Renewal Program of Ghana. Honorable program with lofty ideals, make budgeting efficient, make public expenditure monitoring efficient. But systems fail. This morning I was reading an article where somebody is trying to ask why. He's trying to ask, is it because the systems are designed for a Western culture and we impose them without adaptation? Or is it because naturally adaptation fails over here, so we need a new culture and approach towards systems? I don't like that second space. Where's Kevin? Okay. Today I called Patrick in the morning, and who did I call in the morning first, before Patrick? Yes, I called Abeku first, and I said, are you near Kevin? And he said, no. And I said, oh, how sad, because I wanted to front load your reflections. You know, after seeing how passionate your expressions are, I thought I could motivate myself by engaging you ahead of time. But we spoke a bit yesterday, and POFMAP, the project I just spoke about, addresses some of what you were talking about concerning our country, our ability to do stuff. But POFMAP, as far as I'm concerned, did not work for many reasons. So one day on the circuit, I met the accountant of a project at the Ministry of Works and Housing, and I asked him, who gave you this system you're working with? And he said, KPMG. So on my way back to Pricewaterhouse, I stopped at KPMG, and I asked, are you hiring? And interestingly, the HR manager came out, and she said, well, sounds interesting. I'll arrange a meeting for you. And I came, I met a partner, and within a few weeks, I was working for KPMG. And I learned, we went for an alumni walk. It's the only organization I know that has a bell that it can ring and say, alumni come, and we come. I've worked in so many organizations, but alumni don't respond to employers. But KPMG, everybody comes because the training was so good. And even when I was working in Heineken in Europe and all that, if I had a challenge on a project, I would call some of my ex-colleagues and be like, Charlie, I need some methodology here. I need some experience. It was so good. So KPMG trained us, but KPMG had a big challenge as well. They served the richest companies in the country. So they would train and their people would get poached. And they would train and their people would get poached. It was not as lucky as Ashesi, where a lot of you come and work here. But at least we have the goodwill towards the mothership, as we call KPMG. So I went to work there. 15 months later, I had got enough training, and I found a job in British American Tobacco as a sales manager for Southeast Ghana. That was tough. That was really tough. And when you talk about cultural shock, that is what it was. KPMG had something they called professionalism. You arrive and, I can't go to KPMG like this. They would question that. But a sales job is ragtag. If you have to carry boxes, you carry them. If you have to, take money manually, you take it. If you have to. So the cultural shock was difficult. So I heard later that they needed somebody in IT, business systems manager. And I found my way there as business systems manager. There were other reasons. Whenever they transfer you in British American Tobacco, they give you a certain lump sum for the inconvenience. So I was also getting myself transferred needlessly from Takoradi to Accra, Accra to Takoradi, and, it was all working out in my favor. So BAT was, quote unquote, the fire baptism, because I'd been in KPMG, I could follow my bosses, right? You go, you have a big meeting, consultants speak, they present. It's very structured. When I got to BAT, they said they would have an infrastructure manager and I would take care of business systems. First day in Takoradi, infrastructure manager told me he's resigning. He's going back to Sierra Leone. Where's my brother from Sierra Leone? So there was a guy called Kolade Top. And Kolade said he's leaving. I said, Lord have mercy. You know, crash course in Unix and Windows Server platforms, and you know, because it was not my life. But you know, we survived. And then a year after that, I moved. I saw that one. I just saw a newspaper advert. Yesterday was when we met at Standard Chartered head office. It was the first time I'd seen so many newspapers in a long time. But anyway, in those days, you know, if you wanted a job, you bought a newspaper and you checked. So I saw an advert. They were looking for a CIO in a company. They didn't name the company, but it seemed like something that was interesting. And then I found my way to become CIO of Ghana Breweries. Again, on the cultural side, and I have to be mindful so that I give you enough time for questions. We'll be done soon. Again, on the cultural side, certain things tell you what is coming. When I went to Ghana Breweries, I was 29. And then I saw a notice on the notice board. You know, I'm talking about newspapers, notice boards, a lot of things which Betty Blankson doesn't like. But those were the emails of the day. So I saw a notice on a notice board that said, so Eric Nsakon joins us, in this role. He's 30 years old. And the HR guy was passing. So I was like, hey, you gave me an extra year. And he said, you have no idea how much trouble I'm in for your age. I put it there deliberately. So I thought, hey, what culture is this? Like, the people think I'm too young. So the HR has given me an extra year so that, you know, they accept me as capable of doing the job. But I mean, if you can't do it at 29, how can you do it at 30? So, I mean, that was an interesting revelation for me. A year into the job, one of my friends from university came. He was also working there. And he said, you know, you are really making a statement with your style. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, look, everybody was expecting that you are so excited to be in this role and you are so grateful to the principals of the... But Eric, you are so ambitious. It's like you've come into the job and you seem to be interested in what's happening at Heineken in Holland. This role and whatever perks come with it. And I said, yeah, but I'm only 29, or at that time 30. I mean, do you want me the next 30 years to be trying to consolidate the perks of the office of this? I couldn't also understand him. But he was a prophet, because a couple of years later, I managed to again find my way into the Heineken head office, which was the parent shareholder of Ghana Breweries. That one was, you know, I'm a person of faith, so you excuse me a bit when I also make some divine incursions, but that one was just divine coincidence, because we went for, the CEO took me to an event in the Netherlands, and honestly, everybody who was important in Heineken seemed to be there. So at lunchtime, literally, if all the bosses were sitting here, I saw some small table where I could have a sandwich, and I moved there to finish my sandwich quickly before somebody even comes to big trouble with more instructions of what we should do. And then suddenly somebody pulled a chair and sat next to me. So I looked up and I realized, this is the guy I've been seeing on stage. He looks like the most important guy in the event, but I don't know who he is. So he asked me who I was. I told him, and I said, but who are you, if I may ask? And he said, his name is Roof. And I said, Roof what? And he said, Dusima. And I said, no, you are not the chief information officer of Heineken Group. And then he laughed. He said, what have you heard about me? And I said, well, I need you. Because I know such guys, you know, within 30 seconds, somebody has called him. So I was just like, I need you. And he said, well, for what? And I said, nothing is happening in my little brewery. You know, we are doing this project. Some guy is blocking us. We are doing this project. This investment is not coming. So he was like, wow. And then he was like, I'm sure we can help you, but we also need resources in Amsterdam. So I said, I hear you. And just like I predicted, somebody called him. Betty Blankson, what would you do if you got to Accra after that conversation? I'll help you. I sent him my CV. Because he said he needs resources in Amsterdam. And to my friend's prophecy that I was not too, invested in being there for 30 years, I told him that, look, I'm from a brewery, I know what to do. And then he responded, very grateful for this, or something like that. So he knew I'd caught the hint. So a year later, I was in Amsterdam under the auspices of Rolf de Sima. He didn't put me in his team, but he was clearly very influential in the Heineken organization. And one of the skills I developed in Amsterdam was selective name dropping. Because when my back was really to the wall, I would let a few people know how I came to Amsterdam. And somehow things would start moving again, because Dusima was really, really influential. And then later I heard he had been transferred as the CEO in one of the Latin American countries. So I booked an appointment to see him before he left. He rescheduled twice. And then when I finally saw him, he said, I've been very patient about this meeting, and I've asked for 10 minutes. All his appointments are at least half an hour or an hour. So what is it? And I said, well, I'm just kind of grateful that you sorted me out. And he said, oh, he had heard that my projects were going okay. So he did not expect that I'm grateful to him for coming there. Like, as far as he's concerned, it was a recruitment. But what are my future plans? So I told him a few things. And then he also thanked me for coming by. A year or two later, one of the bosses in Heineken IT told me that, I had resigned from Heineken. I was coming back to Ghana. My daughter, it's another whole story. I was not happy with the European schooling system, let's just call it by its name, by racism. And I wanted to move out as quickly as possible so that my children could have, the kind of schooling that I wanted them to have. But then just when I moved the family back, I had shipped all my things, like 2 months to go. This boss calls me and he's like, he wants to give me a new contract, double promotion, this, that. I'm like, hey, are you not the same guy laying off some Europeans? I've heard announcements all over the place. And he said, yeah, let them go. But I want you to come back. So I said, well, give me 2 months vacation. That's what I need right now. Because the negotiation that is going to go on in Ghana, you need peacekeeping forces to deal with that. The family had gone. Everybody had gone. I had given up the space and all. But anyway, that's another story. But later on, that guy told me that before Rolf de Sima left Amsterdam, he told him that under no circumstances should he ever take protection off me. So basically, when he came and offered me those roles and all that kind of thing, it was partly in response to that. I'm just talking about mentoring and some kind of things. So I think you get the drift of that. But a year later, I still came back. Honestly, like I said, I fought many battles in my life, but I know when I've lost. And this one, I tried, but Charlie, keeping the children in a different country, it was just becoming impossible. So I came back, and by the time I came back, I needed a career switch. Like I told you, I started at the office of the president because the DFID had a recruitment going. They funded it. I came. I couldn't. Looking at the face of politicians every day was difficult. It was not. We were made from different stock. So when I designed a prototype system, if we have enough time, I'll go over that. So the prototype system. Here is a case where our boss was the chief advisor to the president. She told us that President Kufuor has 22 priorities, and he wants that to be his legacy. So this is the West Africa Gas Pipeline, the National Health Insurance Scheme, the National Youth Employment Program, Those were the things that they wanted as their legacy. So I said, oh, but this is a normal, monitoring and evaluation system. Red light when it's red, green when it's, let's design it. So I went to the computer science department of Legon, and I just saw a student, to be honest. It tells you how small I felt this was going to be. I saw a student and I'm like, do you like coding? Are you? So the guy asked me the requirements. I told him, and he said, well, he has to be honest with himself, but he thinks a TA should do it. So he directed me to a TA. The guy listened and he was like, no big deal. We should meet at his father's house. We went, we sat down, he did the whole prototype and everything. And that's where it got complicated, because I felt like there was some budget for 60,000 pounds was being paid to some 3 guys to do this. So me, at the point I was like, oh, but you the 3 guys, put together 300 pounds and give to this guy, he will accept it. No. So I asked the guy, I came clean with the guy that, I can do something of my own resources, but it will be very insulting. And he said, oh, why do I think it was for money he was doing it? It's for access. So which meetings can I take him to? And I said, oh, that one, the ministers, anywhere you want to go. Because this is our prototype, we present it at the highest level. And he said, that's what he wants. It's not, because I think when he looked at me, he knew there's not much in this place. Yeah. So we took him. We took Kobe to places. And it was not like, Kobe was not even the kind of guy who wants, the handshake. Well, he wanted to see how the setting runs. How the ministers play their game, how the programs are discussed, so on and so forth. So it was very easy. And Kobe is now a professor in the UK, and I book appointments when I want to catch up. But that is how it started. Once Kobe's prototype came out, I resigned. And I went into Telecoms. And that is really what I am known for the most part of my life. So the telecoms part I'll rush through, because that one is, I'm sure, going to be the subject of most of the discussion. But I went to Discoverytel, which was an internet service provider. I didn't last more than 3 or 4 months. And then I went to Tigo as Chief Information Officer. And then I went to Ashesi to teach as an adjunct for a semester, but I was also a full-time faculty lecturer at KPMG, and I was also, I think, teaching at Accra Institute of Technology. I was doing too much, but I left that as CIO of Airtel, and then head of the enterprise division of MTN, and then head of sales and distribution for MTN. I always qualify that at the time that we were scaling mobile money, because that's what nearly tested my, ability to breathe. But after that was banking, meltwater, entrepreneurship. There's a lot I can go on about that, but I think you should ask questions now. Yes, boss. Please, your name is not standing by. Are you Kwame or? Are you Kwame? Kajitan. Oh, we spoke yesterday. Yeah.
I just wanted to find out. It's like everywhere you went, they were interested in you. I want to know the secrets. What was the kind?
They were interested. Maybe that's the part I tell. No, it's always a mixture. It's always a mixture. You see, the organization I can speak of most is MTN, because that's the longest. That's where I stayed longest. But even though I don't remember the statistics too well, in 2011 when I joined, I think you could probably argue that most most managerial, senior managerial, general managerial, like I'm not trying to go through their structure, but most of those jobs from middle to top and you are not able to resolve your issues. So we need to promote some people. So he was, amenable to that. And fast track to later on, I met one guy called Ranim in South Africa, and somebody asked him, "Oh, Ranim, they said you lived in Ghana for 10 years. So how did you leave a place that you had been for 10 years? And he said, well, they recruited a guy called Eric Insako. And we thought he was coming as a sales guy. And then he came and put on his engineering hat and started chasing us out. But the truth is that, I don't remember what role Ranim was doing, this is not personal to him, but the protocol became, if you promote 30 people and 2 fail, it's all right. So let's promote a lot of Ghanaians into roles and do stuff. So of course, just to explain, in this example, I think you've got your answer, right? I don't think Ranim might have the same compliments for me that the people who were promoted would have, but that's natural in every organization. I should have used a pseudonym instead of telling you Ranim's name. Yes, Innocent.
So I think one of the stories that I've heard time and time again is how a person who is a professional in one domain gradually gets to move from that domain. So in your case, it was chemical engineering, and then your initial roles were a bit closer to chemical engineering, and you gradually moved to the management information systems MBA, and then telecoms, and you became like full software oriented, right? And my big question is, how important were the different experiences that you had prior to getting into your software engineering days or your your IT days? How important were your previous experiences to your success when you finally got into that role?
So I think, first of all, they were very important because that was all I had. I came into the MBA, like I said, with a degree in which the first time we kind of used the computer room, we were typing our projects. And Valco taught me all I knew about IT at the time. And when we went to Belgium, cut a long story short, I was feeling insecure about our capacity to do hands-on technology work. Of course, I got into consulting, which was a sweet spot where, you go to meetings and other people configure the machines in those days. We were also doing some application work. But I think the key principle that engineering taught me is expressed in one of the meetings we had on refractories in Valco. I didn't understand anything in that meeting, to be honest. Like, the senior engineers were there, and they were calling the bricks by some codes. So, we used to bake the carbon with K1, and now we are using A5, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? But halfway into the meeting, you notice even though this book is empty, I carry it, because halfway into the meeting, those days, there was nothing you could record with. I started to write verbatim what they were saying, because I just feared a question was going to come. So I would write verbatim for like 5 minutes, then I would read over and not be following the meeting. And then it started to come together that this thing is just codes. There's nothing going on. It's just, Just then, Carbon Superintendent asked me a question. He was like, oh, young man, national service guy, we always like fresh perspective. What do you think about this discussion? So I went back to my thing and said a few things. Look, there's a lesson I learned from the mobile money journey, right? You might think you don't speak Twi, but I tell you, you can address Asante in his court. They will help you complete the sentences. You need like 5 words. I know it sounds mysterious, but you just need to try. You get in front of him, you say, Nana, immediately they start helping you. They will start laughing. And then they'll say, okay, this is this guy, that kind of thing. And that is human society. And that was what brought me into IT as well. That's how I survived. So that principle was not an engineering principle. It's not like chemical engineering helped me in IT. But the principle of write down a few things, break the ice, let them know that at least you respected them enough to listen to a few things, but you don't understand it all. They will help you with the rest. And that's how I survived in that. But the second part of your question is true. A lot of innovation is locked by the coming together of disciplines, which is difficult in our time. For some reason, Patience, do you know anybody who's not doing your program but is in Ashesi, like is doing management or law or something? So we should all be like Patience. Because it's where innovation comes together. It's a bit difficult in one tunnel. Yes. What's your name? Bequeen. Okay. Mm.
About losing so many battles in the way when you lost. Now, you never made mention of taking your keys to personal. That means that you have a level of emotional intelligence. How does one get to that level where nothing is personal and you just get to accept it and
Well, I'm the youngest of my siblings. And then to add insult to injury, my children are female. So I'm not used to winning. Whereas maybe, some other people are used to winning, but I typically was brought up in an environment where when I argue, I lose. And then out of charity, one day they'll give you some territory back. And I think, of course, when you are the youngest sibling and you are also parenting girls and so on, you also learn that you need to put in the fight. Otherwise, it gets worse. At least be heard. I would rather we did this. Or, one day I was with my daughters and they said we should go onto a roller coaster. This was not in Ghana. Ghana roller coaster, I would be so scared, honestly. But I'm sure some of you have. There's one here, isn't it? Or am I wrong? Where is it?
It's a children's park.
Ridge? Okay. I'm sure. Anyway, so they said we should go on to this thing. I tried. I couldn't opt out. I went and sat on the thing. But unfortunately, halfway through the thing, my younger daughter looked at me and she started getting concerned because there was something about my expression that looked like I'm just counting down in my head when this thing ends. So the next time they came up with that idea, years later, she said, Daddy, you can wait over there. We'll be back. Because they don't want to be responsible for a heart attack. You see, but that's what I mean by the first time I put in my protest, I lost. But because of that, they observed me a bit closely. And then they took the decision on my behalf that this time you don't even need to talk. We are not taking you anywhere. And that's the only way that, we get through. But I missed your name again. Bequeen. Yes, Mohammed.
good morning again, sir.
Yeah.
So,
After him.
Looking at the way you transition, and then I just want to compare that time, during those transitions, the times that, during the time that it happened, to now. Do you think, using maybe the same strategy that you used then, do you think it would be something that you survive like right now? Do you think you survive, going from company A to company B, or just moving up the ladder within a very now in this day and age?
That's very difficult for me to say. Because in my time also, I had the most unconventional route that I know about. I don't know anybody else who was doing it the way I was doing it. And that applies to the principles of my life in general. That when I was a young man, I used to borrow money from banks. And even my mother would get into prayer and worship over this kind of son that she has. But I was able to pay back by some means or the other, so I don't take conventional routes. But what I know is that's why I said there's a divine incursion. What I know is that I know the risk that is involved in what I'm doing, and then I pray that I'm going to get through. The example I gave you, through that, I started to realize that, well, if I take a mortgage at a certain crazy interest rate in a macroeconomy like ours, and then I cannot afford, to quote my friend Toju in Holland, he said, you cannot buy a house and drink the same amount of milk. So something had to give. And it was a question of looking to see what you can hive off so that you can focus and pay this one. And then one day, at least if you've paid it, you can fill your milk thing again. So I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer. Whether that approach. The only, before I went to Pricewaterhouse, when I arrived from Belgium, they used to give us some scholarship allowances. I thought it would be a lot. But when we arrived, I realized that the money was just going. I'd saved some small for the job hunting period. Because I told you, J. Kwesi Nsako, my honorable father, had told me that he's retiring, so you're off payroll, and you've gone and resigned from this atomic thing, so figure yourself out. So immediately I said, well, what about those places in Asylum Down where I see come and learn Windows for 2 weeks? Come and learn. I went to one of them and I'm like, you know what? I cannot be unemployed under the circumstances. So I want to teach some of these things. The guy said, fine, come on this day, come on that day. Then on my way back in Labone, I saw a signboard, Clydestone. Some of you may have heard of that company. But I went inside and I said, this looks like, I hear you guys do some IT stuff and so on. Those days when you're working, you're holding your CVs. Very few people had email addresses. So I dropped one there. I got a call from Clydestone. I went for an interview. And then Clydestone said I should sign a bond for 2 years because they had some check clearing machines or something that they have to train you on in the UK for 1 week. So I thought through the whole thing and I thought, what options do I have? They should give me the offer while I search, because I cannot sit here and say, I will not sign the bond, I will not come, because I don't have an offer. So I took it, on the day I was supposed to start, they asked me whether I was coming, but then Pricewaterhouse that morning had said the offer is ready. They are waiting for the partner to sign. It was a big risk. I didn't really want to go to work and resign the next day. But at the time that I said no to Clydestone, the offer was not in my hand from Pricewaterhouse, which I felt very reckless because, my dad had warned me that no unemployment. So I'm just saying these methods, how can I recommend them to my child? I cannot. By all means, if I'm talking to my child, I'll say, before you decline one, make sure you have the other, that type of thing. But at that particular moment, what seized on me was that, so if I go to work as though I've taken this offer, tomorrow I will not come if I have the Pricewaterhouse one. And I really didn't want that stress. So I said, no, I'm not coming. And then luckily, Pricewaterhouse called an hour later. But that was the longest 1 hour of my life. So I don't know about methods. But Kasim, you had a question.
Yes, thank you very much. So how did you feel about the career switches from this place to this place to this place? And do you feel self-actualized in the telecom space, or you may want to?
I'm no longer in telecoms.
Oh.
From telecoms, I went to banking. I was with Stanbic Bank. I was head of engineering of Stanbic Bank.
So do you feel the need to go to
The industries are finished. I mean, I've never done natural resources. I've never done mining or oil, and I don't know if I would thrive in. I don't know. I don't know if I would thrive in that space. But something about a naturally occurring mineral in the ground sounds to me like it's not for me. There's very little I can add to how much of it is in the ground, right? So, but of course, I mean, we wouldn't know. Yes. Today, Nicole, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All the points that you pivoted,
Yeah.
were there any reactions, probably negative, from those around you, like your family or your mentors? And how did you, if there were, how did you deal with them? Did they inform your next steps to some extent, or you just disregarded them altogether because you knew what you wanted?
Well, there are reasons I don't recommend my life for anybody, right? Because there are impacts on, that type of, the ecosystem reacts. We want stability around here, right? This, you quit, you move to here, definitely you are going to get a lot of pushback in our society. And I think in a Western society as well, because when I'm in a country where I get to go to church and so on, it still produces these gasps of when did all that happen? Because some people think 55 is young. I think it's old. But for some people, these many stories in that period is a bit too much. So how are you keeping it all together? But yeah, I mean, that's why I said to the Queen, I think, that I lose a lot of battles, and I don't take it personal because I just find it's not conventional, and a lot of people cannot deal with it in that sense. I also think that my daughters have taken the good parts. My daughter Nanaba is 17. But she's been living on her own in North America she was in a boarding school, but now she's on a university campus. And I'm very proud of her for that. Her big sister also has been, at least her big sister, when she went, she would have gone at 20, but there was COVID. So she got to do 1 year remotely. And then she's held her own since then. It's interesting now when they miss my call, their response is, "You called, are you okay?" I am the problem, right? Because as for them, they can't see how, I can do anything useful at the moment. But that's actually quite a good milestone to achieve for them. It's not my achievement, it's their achievement. Yes, Michael. Hey, so which of these many names is your last name?
Sylvester.
Michael Kwabna Sylvester. Interesting. Okay, please go ahead.
You moved through management, IT, chemical engineering, entrepreneurship. Did you have an ideal career goal as you moved through all these roles, or was there something you were looking for and in every switch?
Please mention where I've moved right now. You said management, entrepreneurship, something? IT. Okay. Because I'm not aware myself of where I was from. Telecom and banking. Okay. Now tell me, what's your question?
Was there an ideal career goal you had as you moved through these roles, or was there a thing you were looking for in all the switches? Because I've worked in sales, I've worked as a TA, and each time I was just really eager to get back to a more technical job. But like you were able to stay in each of these for so long, and you thrived in some of them. And I'm just wondering where.
To be honest, if I sit here, it is easy to intellectualize things, right? I can give you some vision right now of how since I was born I felt that but it was all just circumstances. I don't think I reflected that I want to go this way, that way. And Chelsea, you have a question? Mm-hmm.
If I'm correct,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that kind of nature of yours influenced your journey, or did they help you? And if you had to talk to someone who's introverted, right, opposite you, what would you tell them? And the second question is, if you were to tell your younger
Mm-hmm.
self anything, your 50-year-old self anything,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you know now, what would you tell him? Thank you.
So you notice I wrote because I remembered was it Perry from yesterday? He said he only remembers the first question. So I'm using a different format. This introvert-extrovert thing, I'll tell you something that happened when we were in Heineken. We went for some, Myers-Briggs assessments, but whatever, a lot of psychological profiling. And I kept coming out as an extrovert. So all the people who were coming out as extroverts, they were asking them, so what do you do after work? Oh, we go to the pub. We go, and they said, Eric, where do you? I said, I go home. And so where do you hang out? I call my family in Ghana. And they were finding it difficult because a European definition is different from an African definition. I was not really enjoying going to, talk about nothing, right? And at the same time, if I'm here, it's difficult. You are right that the things I find easy are engaging somebody or, asking for a favor a bit difficult. But so those are so I don't really advise people to say, okay, I do sometimes because I was speaking to, I think, a student in Legon, and his name is Nana. I met him randomly. We were chatting, and then he said he wants exactly something similar to the question you're asking. He said he wants to know whether it's because I was a salesman that I can just call people and say, subscribe to my YouTube channel, do this, do that, because he doesn't operate that way, and he thinks I'm getting my way, and he wants to know how to behave that way. I don't know. That seemed to be like what he was asking, and I said, don't behave that way, because maybe it doesn't make you happy. Just do what makes you happy. Like I've been forcing myself to learn languages. And exactly what I was saying earlier, that I feel if I know 2 words, it opens a lot of doors because people will help me to finish the sentence I'm trying. But, it's a bit funny when, does anybody speak Ewe, for example? Hey, how was the class selected? Okay, does anybody speak Twi? Okay. So it's not a question of the selection. It's a question of it's mostly English. Does anybody speak French? Je voudrais apprendre le français. What did I say? Pouvez-vous m'aider avec le français? Do you notice that my accent and so on are not a native? I'm not somebody who is fluent. But the effort is enough, right? So if right now I say, je voudrais apprendre le français, but please give me some water. You're not going to judge me, are you? Because we've tried, and that's how far we've gone, So on that side of it, there are a lot of things that are a mix. But on this side, at my 15-year-old self, that guy was a bit interesting because, at that time I was getting ready for my O-levels, I think I turned 16 just before the papers started. And what is interesting for me is that the social network of my people at that time is the exact social network now. Like, I was in Achimota school, it was a big school, we were over 300. Like, the classmates were over 300. But there were no phones when we vacated. I would jump in a trotro and there were friends, both male and female. I'll just show up at the doorstep and those days you visit one person and then the discussion is about who lives closest. So the moment you get there, we are making our plans for who should come over or who we should go and see. And my mom there, she gave up on seeing me anywhere near the house when she closed work. Because Accra, as it is configured today, a lot of it is new. But when I was a 15-year-old, it was Laboni, Legon, Dansuman, Kaneshi, the Makola area. Adenta came later. And I was a regular visitor to every part of what Accra was at that time. So I get, that was it. But so that person I wouldn't change because that's the person who cultivated the network. Of course, my network has expanded, but those people are people that, when they call, it's just, it's just family. It's just, the conversation is just, it doesn't matter that maybe we've not spoken for a year, but it just takes off, and we can't do much about that. But Nalamle, you had a question. We could do a lot of things, which became the guardrails. But even there, I always caution that 5 years into the future, it's not the organization that is not ready, but the world changes 5 years on. So you have to reinvent those guardrails. You have to reinvent everything that has been done. And that's why, I keep saying that it's been a long time since I left Telecoms. Because I saw one of my former colleagues yesterday, and we were joking about that. He said, you left in March 2021. So right now, it's exactly 4.5 years. September is 6 months away from March. So you can either say it's almost 5 years since you left, or you say it's 4 years and some. But basically, it's a long time. And, I'm not able to speak to a lot of stuff anymore. You have a question? Oh, okay. Innocent, please go.
I think one of the key things that I noted from your story is this quality to take risks. And I want to find out how much has that played into your current role, which is in entrepreneurship. I know you mentioned that you were at MEST for some time, and I see that you currently have also a couple of entrepreneurial projects or businesses that you are leading and spearheading. And I want to find out how important is that risk-taking element, that ability to be able to pivot at different stages in your career, that ability to take advantage of opportunity like you did with the CIO of Heineken within that short 15 seconds or 30-second window that you had. Like, how have all these qualities helped you to get to the stage of focusing more on entrepreneurship, and how are you translating it maybe to some of perhaps the companies you may be working with or the people you're mentoring?
Well, I don't know whether I am a risk taker in the traditional risk taking sense, because I qualify what I say very carefully, and there are also people who say I'm extremely cautious about the connections that I make. That's why I have the same friends. from when I was 15. And so I'm thinking on the spot here, but I believe that my career, my family life, my community life, and perhaps to some extent material reality in terms of resources have followed the same line of principles. Perhaps my engagement with my church or something is perhaps different. But even there, it's unconventional. Right? Like I try to design a certain framework and operate within it, which is a bit unconventional. It has worked because, you see, if I came as a student to Ashesi today, right? Let me put myself in the shoes of an undergrad entering Ashesi today. I would say there are two options. I can take my orientation to heart and learn about. I watched a video from a lady called, I think she's called Rhonda, Talk with Rhonda or a channel like that. And I felt like she really answered a lot of questions about Ashesi and the student organizations that are on campus, the things you can do, etc., etc., etc. Most likely, for me, the most likely route I would take if I came as a student would be to join nothing. But then I put a lot of pressure on myself then to know at least 100 people very quickly so that I have some kind of my own organizations. And then that is when I start reflecting on which one can I subsume in the one that the school has created. What I'm saying might be difficult to imagine, but that's how I operated with MEST. By name, by country, by personal information, I knew at least 100 of the entrepreneurs in training. They're on speed dial, they call, they text, they do this, they do. And I remember the conversations. When I forget, I tell them that, hey, I just mixed you up with this person. Well, you know. So that has become an important network now that I'm trying to understand certain languages and so on and so forth. And there was a guy I called in Enugu once in Nigeria, and he was like, who am I that you even call me? Because it seems like, you know, you really want us to do well. At that time, he was about to get married and so on and so forth. And we have those conversations. But that is unconventional. When I went to Heineken, they offered the same thing. They have cultural lessons for Europe. They have language lessons. Immediately I decided, no, I don't want to join anything. Then I started learning the Dutch from television. They have subtitles. So they speak English, then they subtitle it in Dutch. When it got to a certain point where I felt this is also an approach, you know, it occurred to me that I was speaking more Dutch than the people who went for the classes. So that one, I wasn't going to... So I'm just saying that I kind of filter. But to her point about personality type, I don't filter and do nothing. Because I also feel that if you go through all these organizations, you might get to know probably about 100 people. The way I operate also, I might get to know about 100 people. But then it makes me ready to say which structure do I collapse to join which organization or to do this or to do that. Or I can also continue to operate with no membership. You see Katanga here. There's nobody from... Do you know Katanga? What's the southern border of Cameroon?
Southern border.
You don't have...
We have a couple of countries.
Okay, you can check on the map. But like the DRC, you don't have a border with the DRC. You don't remember anything like that, right? With Congo. But the DRC has a runaway province called Katanga. And my hall of residence in KNUST, as you call it now, UST back in the day, was Katanga. But so that, for example, creates a lot of fellowship for me. That's why I wear it. And it has evolved, you know, what Katanga was then, what it is now. There's a lot of, 32 years is a long time. But So yes, I do have some cliques that I sometimes, connect to, and formal groups and so on and so forth, but nothing cast in stone. Yes, Dr. Kosa.
You can go first and then I'll ask the question.
Life has a way of taking us to unexpected places. You speak from all your stories. So, as someone with experience moving to a lot of new fields, what would you advise for any of us if we had to move into a new field, something we are maybe completely unfamiliar with?
Well, I can only repeat what my favorite lecturer, Tom Nyajehe, told us. We used to complain a lot in engineering school that we are never going to make it designing reactors when there's no reactor in the lab. And blah, 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 blah. But the day Tom Nyajehe gave me a project to produce biogas from palm oil waste, I mean, what I could see was fabricated metal pipe that we were using, But it was him who told me that this is a reactor. A reactor can be a cooking pot if you like. You don't have to see anything special to call it a reactor. So the second thing that he always mentioned was that the principles are sacrosanct. Like, at the time that you are studying for the ICS, there will always be people who are calling you from MIT, calling you from wherever, calling you from a job they are doing at IBM. And there's a way in which people can run down what you think you have, because they do it differently. But it's most important that you know that these principles are well thought through, they are approved by big institutions, and if you master them, you can be the best in the world. Like chemical engineering back in the day, I think has served me well. Welcome.
I was going to say that you seem to be sort of an early adopter of things. And so, for example, I know that you're quite engaged with the new generative AI tools.
Mm-hmm.
You do quite a bit with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that has been the case
Mm-hmm.
throughout multiple phases of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that,
Mm-hmm.
and then your thoughts about how you see, sort of as an early adopter
Mm-hmm.
of the current developments
Mm-hmm.
in technology.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, and what should people who are looking to be creators in that space think
Mm-hmm.
about?
Yeah. So, interestingly, in the times when technology used to be gadgets, I was very conservative. I kept my BlackBerry for a long time. And I didn't want to be known as... But in terms of the concepts, yes, I've always wanted to experience them. And so that explains some of this, if I was ever to try to pretend that it was planned. But yeah, there was a time when, if you take the technology journey in Ghana, so in the late 80s, when they said blue chip or some of these companies, they were just selling PCs, they were, boxes. Then in the 90s, the internet came, so network computer systems and so on. But by the time I started working, applications were doing the rounds, payrolls, financial ledgers, so on and so forth. And it moved on to, in fact, the people who made the biggest killing were doing the cabling, the local area networks, and so on and so forth. So in those days, we tried to, stay relevant, to try to find our way where the trends were going. But AI, I have found extremely phenomenal, but at the same time, I was telling the guy I was talking to as I was driving here that a good friend of mine taught me once that when you find it difficult to describe something, always find 3 examples that you use. So if I'm telling somebody computer science is a program where they do that, the person doesn't understand. I could also say computer science is what Pamela, Betty, and Abeku did. And if they know the three of them well, they might understand it better. And that's how I looked at AI at some point, because in my little mind, after watching a ton of MIT OpenCourseware videos and so on and so forth, I thought there's a bit too much mathematics, statistics, probabilities, all that. So what are the central themes of, model training? What can you do after that? Embeddings, some reinforcement learning during interactions, a few things, because I felt it's better for me to go with my hypothesis, which is like, okay, my hypothesis is AGI will never happen. That is a hypothesis I live with. Now, obviously, to derive backwards, I have to divide the world into what my prof taught me as the components of intelligence. So he said at that time, language was one of the big ones, which was like a preserve of humanity. And then bonds between people, and morality, and rationality, and a few others. Sorry, when I write, nobody can read. But when I look at it now, I think one of the big ones he mentioned was abstraction, ability to create abstract models. When I look at it now, machines are doing quite well here in abstraction and language processing. The language bit, though, when Geoffrey Hinton won the Nobel Prize, they called him, I think at dawn, to react. And even in that brief reaction, he had very, very, very insulting words for Noam Chomsky, who's like the big linguistics guy who said LLM is autocomplete on steroids. And you see, Chomsky's question is quite simple, that how does a baby learn to talk? Because he's like, if you have trillion tokens that you're using for training, then clearly that's not how the human brain works. Because a baby is exposed to very few words before they start creating their own. And those are debates that I don't want to get into. But like, once I started to, get examples of what I want to know, it all started getting a bit easier for me to appreciate that, well, this is statistics, this is mathematics. It takes us within a certain domain. It will continue to grapple with wanting to do all the other stuff. I don't think it has to, because it's not a personality. But to answer you, looking into the future, when I talk to people, that's the method I also try to say, that when your mind is creating a certain hypothesis, I allow it to flow. But it doesn't mean it's right. I don't go into religious arguments on this. I don't go to people and say, I heard you saying this, I'm here to shoot it down. No, but it just helps me to understand the principles that are underlying that. And of course, if at a certain point, those principles are leading me towards another hypothesis, which I doubt, I would welcome it. But the pivots definitely are part of why my learning method became what it was, because I was always in a new environment. I hope I have not avoided the central part of the question. But anyway.
So take two final questions. We are at
What project would you say you're most proud of?
I think I know the one. When I worked for Heineken, who's from Nigeria? Nobody? Chelsea, you have Nigerian blood? You've stayed there before? That's interesting.
So maybe I have the biggest connection to Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
I was born there.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So when I worked for Heineken, there was this, again, hypothesis that IT projects always fail in Nigerian breweries. So I was given a customer relationship management project, which I was supposed to do in Nigerian breweries and La Réunion. La Réunion is, the French have something they call Département Outre-mer, the department overseas. And La Réunion and some other countries are part of that group. So they vote in French elections. But when you visit those places too, you begin to see that, anyway, there are other issues to contend with. But, because it was customer relationship management, everybody said, oh, La Réunion is French territory. They understand it, there's no problem. Nigeria will never get it right. But when I went to La Réunion, I honestly felt they were not ahead of Nigeria in any way. So I told myself that to answer your question, I will make this project interesting. So I met a guy in IT called Peter Osegali. And then I met two salespeople. One was called Ayo Lawal and one was called Ayo something else. And we said, well, why don't we work together? The day that Peter is confident that the server is all right, everything is configured, and you, the sales managers, are convinced that your salespeople can take the orders, they can see the events, they can do this, then we have a live prototype. So it will stop being about a system, and it will be about the work of Peter, Ayo, and Ayo, which was what we did. So the moment it became about Peter, Ayo, and Ayo, Peter's boss was obviously like, hey, what's Peter doing that is getting all these compliments and I'm not part of it? Ayo's bosses are like, hey, guys, what's Ayo up to? So. So the thing was live, widespread, lot of feedback. We have done a lot of major projects. But why do I cite that particular one? Because I felt that we were up against huge amounts of prejudice. We were up against a test of the mettle of 3 individuals who had to get it right so that a system could roll out to over 100 people. And those principles, I think, were one of my biggest learnings, even when we were doing a 12 million user system like mobile money and those kinds of things. It just kept occurring to me that you need a Peter, you need 2 Ayos. Once those people can stand, eventually it's going to attract the right kind of energy. Hey, today, my brother is quiet. Prince, right? What's the name? You haven't talked today, right? Anyway, I'm sure we'll talk at break time. Okay. All right. Is that a trick question? I mean, when I heard the question, the first thing that crossed my mind is how much of it do I remember? But yeah, chemical engineering was a very special program, and I really loved it because I loved all the components of it: chemistry, engineering, mathematics, projects. It was really good. Do I miss it? I don't feel I've lost it. And would I have liked to work in Temao refinery instead of working for the employers I work for? Probably not. But not because I don't like chemical engineering, because of institutional dynamics. Well, It's break time from what I remember Ayoko saying. But Ronald, you might want to cut so that